Welcome to the Charlene Singleton Show. I'm so glad that you chose to join me today. We have an awesome show. I'm going to tell you about it in a second. But, you know, you cannot turn your TV on right now without seeing something going on in the mental wholeness world. And mental health has gotten a bad stigma, which is why it's actually blowing out of proportion right now, because a lot of people needed help a long time ago, but because of the stigma that society has put on mental health, many people have not been willing to go and get the necessary help. Well, let me just tell you something. The Bible tells us that we are three-part beings. We are spirit, we are soul, and we are body. Spiritually, we go to church. We want to be spiritually whole. So we go to church and we hear good sermons. We get in the Word of God to get some good Bible studies. That's what we do spiritually. On the physical end, I should have my weights with me because we want to be physically whole, physically healthy. And, you know, health is a habit. Health is a habit. Anyhow, that's another subject. Anyhow, but so many times the mental aspect, mental, emotional aspect of our being gets thrown to the side. I even think about the commercial on TV right now where the man is in the gym. He has the barbell on him and he can't lift it up by himself. There's somebody in the gym that says, I can help you. But the man says, no, you don't know my family. And so he refuses to get the help he needs. Well, let me just tell you, we're going to talk today about mental wholeness, but this is not about crazy people. I mean, it might entail that, but everybody at some time or another should go and get some counseling, some therapy. We'll just call it therapy. Because of this, most of us have gone through traumatic deaths in our family. If you're a widow, or you've lost a spouse, you've lost a parent, you've lost a best friend, you've seen somebody killed. So many times, people can't get through that, and even if you can, you need to get to a therapist. If you've experienced divorce for sure. Yeah. I had a lady tell me the other day, what about the single women who have been single for a long, long time, and they're feeling like they're inadequate? You know what? All that to say, we're going to talk about some of this today. So in a moment, I'm going to be introducing you to our special guest today. But first, we're going to have this commercial break, and then we're going to come back. This is going to give you the opportunity to call your friends and have your friends turn the station to get to this viewing today. Okay, so we'll be right back in just a few minutes. Don't go away. Just take your phone and make a call. Call somebody.
Easter Sunday is coming, and we're going to celebrate the Lord's resurrection. You know the best way to celebrate the resurrection? Introduce somebody to Jesus. How? Invite them to church. You know, most people who don't go to church would come to church if someone just invited them. You can change someone's destiny by inviting them to church and introducing them to Jesus. All you have to do is go to the lobby after service and grab a handful of the invitation flyers that we have. Hand them out in your neighborhood and watch a revival break out as we invite people to church. Let's invite the Inland Empire to meet Jesus and change their destiny.
Welcome back. I have two awesome women of God with me today. and they're going to give us some much needed answers to questions that we have that sometimes we don't want to ask. So, first of all, I have Dr. Shonda Smith with me. Hello, hello.
How you doing?
Oh, great, great. There's a camera right there. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
So I'm going to introduce them because I am so appreciative of the many years and the much money that you all have spent to
And time.
to climb up the ladder in this field. So we have Dr. Shonda Smith. Dr. Shonda Smith is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She specializes in working with women, identity, self-esteem, value, and worth. So Dr. Smith is a PhD. She has an earned PhD from Walden Teaching of Psychology.
Yes, Walden University. It's a teaching degree in general psychology.
All righty. So that's her PhD. I should have did the MA first, but she got her MA in clinical psychology at my alma mater, Azusa Pacific College in Azusa. And she presently is a professor at Liberty University in counseling, education, and family studies. Can you cut that back on? And then I want to introduce Dr. Wanda Cooper. Dr. Cooper is a longtime friend of ours. Actually, her mother, Melita Cross, was an awesome woman of God. She's with the Lord now, but she came to our Gospel Men's Conference a number of times. Her brother, Pastor Heyman Cross, actually, I think we met Heyman first. And he's an awesome man of God that is a nut. He has a great sense of humor. But let me just tell you about Dr. Wanda. So, Dr. Wanda specializes in family reunification, family therapy, and helps to mend relationships that are challenged. And she also enjoys working with women and the problems that women face. So she's able to work with people in crisis, marriage difficulties, and divorce recovery. And let's see, and I can go on and on and on with this. She also works with disorders such as anxiety, depression, domestic violence, grief and loss recovery, physical and sexual abuse, and post-traumatic stress disorder. So, hello, Dr. Cooper.
Hello, everyone. I have to put this in there. I am the fourth child of 11 children. So that's where I get all my wisdom from, my mama.
All right,
Amen.
and my leader was some kind of woman. So, Dr. Shonda is, before we get into this, I just want to talk about how balanced you are. Because if you watch lovelandchurch.org on Sunday morning, you will see somebody with flags, and they are dancing like David before the Lord.
Come on.
With flags. So she is a wonderful example of a balanced woman, but her praise comes first.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It begins with that.
It
right?
begins and
then
ends.
everything underneath falls underneath.
And everything underneath. So we have two women of God who have shown the value of education and experience. So, Dr. Shonda, I'm going to turn this over to you first,
Yes.
and let's just talk.
Yes, so we were talking, I think what we call pre-commercial or pre-show, and we're going to get into talking about some stigmas. We're actually going to get into a lot of things, but one of the things that we're going to get into is stigmas of mental health. And I don't know why I feel like I need to say this, but this is for someone that's watching. Can we as a culture, can we as society, I'm going to offer us a reframe, So this is why some people don't want to seek treatment, mental health treatments, because of stigma. And so there are people out there in churches, outside of churches, that are suffering in silence. So can I offer you a reframe? So when we talk about mental health, let's not associate mental health with crazy. Oh, they're crazy, right? Here's the reframe. How about maybe, someone that's unstable, right? Someone that is, imbalanced, but not crazy. Because what I'm finding is that mass media, and that's where I put, do I want to say blame? I don't know. So I'll say blame for lack of a better word for right now, blame. Because when you think about mental health and you look at mass media, you look at movies, you look at TV shows, you look at, magazines, books, etc., it depicts people that they look like they're crazy, but it's not. There's a backstory to that. Everyone has a narrative, a life narrative, a story. And it requires us taking the time to understand, how did someone that was born, right, get to a place where they're imbalanced or they're unstable? They were not born that way. So there's a story. So they're not necessarily crazy. Again, my reframe is something in their lifespan happened that created some imbalances. So I just felt like I needed to just share that. So it's really more when we talk about people that are needing mental health, and also people that need mental health are not necessarily imbalanced, because I think Pastor Shar mentioned earlier is that sometimes it's about maintenance. It's about tuning up. We go to the doctors once a year for our physical exams. We go to the dentist every 6 months, right? Because we are spirit, soul, and body. What's wrong with going and getting like a mental, when I say mental, I'm talking about your thought life or an emotional checkup. So that's my reframe.
All right.
Hello, and thank you, Doctor. That was really good. Real good segue into what I wanted to say. Part of the stigmas happened because people use the word mental health and mental health illnesses and disorders interchangeably, and they shouldn't. There's definitely a difference between the two. We all have mental health. Everybody in here have mental health.
Absolutely.
Help is merely the way that we think and how we deal with our lives on a daily basis. It's mental health is an absence of a mental disorder. Yeah. And there is a difference, a major difference here. A person's ability to deal and handle life, that's mental health. Yeah. All of us. Right. Now, it becomes a disorder when it interferes with our daily living. Right. When it comes to the point where you can't handle people on any level. You don't want to get up in the morning. Something traumatic may have happened in your life. There are some mental illnesses that can be hereditary, but not all. So that's the difference between the two. So understand, we all have mental health, but we don't all necessarily have mental health illnesses and disorders.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. What Dr. Wanda is saying is that we all begin with mental health. So that means essentially we all, on some levels, we're balanced, right? Then guess what? Life happens, and then it creates this imbalance. And if we don't attend to it, if we don't fix it, so to speak, that's where the imbalance occurs, and then it becomes a mental illness, i.e. a disorder. So that's my share.
And even with the physical, when you were talking, I was thinking about the fact, okay, so we have physical health. But then when we get sick, it's physical sickness.
Yes.
But everybody has one or the other.
Right.
Yes.
And what you said, Dr. Shonda, I think is so good. Just like we don't get sick overnight, most of the time people do not get mentally sick overnight.
Absolutely. There's a progression, right?
Yes.
So what started out as a issue, and if that issue doesn't get transformed, I have this saying, if you don't transform it, you will transmit it, right?
Ooh,
and
good.
sometimes
Good point.
you transmit it onto your relationships with people that are around you, right? So that's why it's so imperative to get in front of it before it becomes a mental illness, right? So that's when, you get into like the diagnoses and things of that nature. It's because there's a progression, because there's time. Time has gone on and it didn't get transformed. And so now that person becomes, imbalanced. I don't know if you have something you want to add.
Yeah, so that brings about, so how do we define it? How do we define mental illness, mental disorders? Well, a mental illness can be, and is often, a medical or mental condition that disrupts a person's thinking, feeling, their moods, their ability to relate on a daily basis. Keyword, something that disrupts that.
Right.
Something that prevents you from wanting to get up in the morning, wanting to take care of your hygiene, wanting to go to work, wanting to go to school. It's also medical conditions that diminishes a person's capacity for coping with the demands of an ordinary life. Diminishes.
That coping, I like that fact.
Yes,
Coping,
yes.
because I see that so many times.
And then lastly, we have to understand this. A mental illness or disorder can affect persons of any age, any race, any religion, or any income.
Yeah, mental illness, it does not discriminate, right?
Exactly.
Oh, it's just for certain groups of people. No, absolutely not. Not at all.
So you got, Dr. Shonda, you said that one of the things you really wanted to address, the common mental illnesses, anxiety, depression.
Oh, the illnesses. Yeah, so, there's various mood disorders, not all mood disorders are, and Dr. Wanda, you can feel free to chime in, but not all mood disorders are equal parts. There's different types of mood disorders. You have, you guys probably heard of bipolar, and there's bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and then there's major depression. There's even the type of mood disorder where there's a combination of the sadness component, but also the word, I'm blanking on the word, what is the word? I think that's part of the bipolar. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. It's a matter of swinging between two poles where, there's moments where there's the serotonin levels are low, where the person is sad, whereas it could be the opposite of that, where they're hyper, they have a lot of energy, sort of like manic. That's the word I was looking for. It's manic. So there's different types of mood disorders. There's different types of anxiety disorders. You might have heard people talk about PTSD, which is now kind of its own separate diagnosis because there's a lot of research and that's backing PTSD. But before PTSD was under the anxiety disorder. And so we get into like panic episodes. I say episodes, but the DSM-5 says panic attack. I just don't like that word because there's nobody's attacking anyone. So panic episodes, anxiety, generalized anxiety disorders. You get into what we call schizophrenia, which is sort of a break with reality. Psychotic disorders is what they're characterized as. Break with reality, I'm saying the same thing. And then you get into childhood mental health disorders, and then adjustment disorders, even personality disorders.
And then you have, so with the anxiety disorders, you also have phobias, the different things that people are afraid of. And I challenge you to look up phobias in your research. It's a plethora of information out there, thank God for the internet. And you would be surprised the things that people are really afraid of. In addition to me doing all of these type of things, I also teach at Valley College, and I teach classes to foster parents and relative caregivers and all of those that are bringing children, bottom line, they're taking care of somebody else's child. And so a lot of times you find even these young children with these different type of phobias, and then you mentioned You mentioned the other anxieties. Personally, there are some things that I believe are overdiagnosed, and that's the ADHD.
Absolutely.
And then that's the bipolar. Every time you turn around, somebody is saying she's bipolar. And when you ask as a therapist,
PTSD.
it's like, okay, what do you mean bipolar? Yeah. Well, 1 minute she's one way and the next minute she's another way. Well, we're all like that. Yeah. If that's the case, we're all bipolar. But there are some very specific things and episodes, as you say, to speak to bipolar. And so there's just a plethora of diagnoses out there. And I want to make this point. People often feel that you can outgrow a disorder, whatever it is. The bottom line is this: mental health disorders or illnesses, they worsen without treatment. You don't outgrow. And the key reason for therapy, there's no magic cures. I use this example, the common cold. Whoever comes up with the common cold, they're going to be a gazillionaire.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because you get a common cold, you can go to the store and get over-the-counter medications to help get rid of whatever's in your body that's causing the cough, the congestion, or whatever. Does that mean you'll never get a common cold again? No. The same thing with mental health. You can go and get the treatments, therapy, or medication, whichever the doctor the doctors prescribe and all of that. And you simply going to therapy helps you to get tools in your hand to manage whatever the disorder is. So you can begin to learn what your triggers are.
Absolutely.
You got anger issues. Okay, so if I walk through this door and I see a certain person, I'm going to get angry. Okay, so now in therapy, we're going to work on how I can do that. But there's no therapist on this earth that can give you a magic pill. And often, I think you can attest to this. People come in the office, I want you to fix me. Well, wrong. I can't fix you. But I can put tools in your hands to help you to manage your way through whatever your issues are.
And I want to also add that you also, yes. Thank you, Dr. Wanda. You can't necessarily fix what you don't understand. And what I love about therapy is that it is coming to get the tools that works for you, because therapy is not equal parts. What works for one person may not work for the other, right?
Yes.
Part of the key, and this is where it involves a community, especially when you're dealing with severe mental illness to the point where the individual cannot function socially, you know, like Dr. Wanda was saying, can't take care of themselves, hygienes, et cetera, academically, occupationally. Part of understanding what mental illness is the educational component of it. And that takes a village. It takes a community of people. So if you have someone that is struggling with a mental illness, a disorder, I want to encourage you, we want to encourage you, understand what that is. Again, you can't transform something, you can't fix something until you understand what it is, and not allowing what you don't understand fill in the gaps through the stigmas that are out there about, for example, like bipolar or PTSD. No, there's real research out there, you know, on these various issues. And so that's my share.
And you know what I think about that? I think about the TV show Monk. Because Monk has a phobia of everything. And this is, you know, it's a comedy drama TV show, but it shows us that just because somebody has a mental disorder, they are not necessarily dangerous. You know, Monk would not hurt a fly.
Right.
But he is afraid of everything, and he goes to therapy with Dr. whatever his name is. I got a new one. One guy died on the show, but he died for real of a heart attack. And so they had Dr. Kramer. But anyhow, Stanley Kramer. So I think about that. And I also think about what you just said. You're not going to get well. And I think this is the problem, especially when it comes down to some of our young children. Because, you know, I've seen young kids, 9, 10, 11, 12, that have some issues. And it doesn't get better, but so many times parents think that they will. Just like physically. So many people are afraid to go to the doctor physically because they're afraid of what the doctor might say. I have a good friend. Her uncle fell off the ladder. He gashed his hand open, and they kept saying, you need to go to the doctor. He was afraid to go to the doctor. It got infected. The infection spread throughout his body, and he died.
Wow. Because
he was afraid. My little sister Diana worked at Kaiser for so many years, and she would say this, and it's going to go back to the stigma with black people in particular. She would say, when the Caucasian guys have anything wrong with them, they're running to the doctor, to Kaiser. She said, but these black men, They are got one foot in the grave before they'll come to the doctor. And so even the same thing. Now with us though, with the mind, it's like this is something in the church especially. This is one of the things you said you wanted to deal with too, that we have this stigma in the church. But before we deal with that, we're going to go to a commercial. So we're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get a little bit deeper into this, why people do not seek help. And then we also are going to be talking about teen depression. So many teenagers are depressed and people don't even know it until it's too late. So call somebody, get on the phone, call your friends, tell them to tune in, and we'll be right back.
Loveland has exciting events coming up in the new year that will help us reach the world and our community. Check out what we have in store.
Calling all men. If you want to know what the real measure of a man is, then you need to join us starting this Thursday, March 9th at 7 p.m. at the Loveland Fontana campus. Our men's life group is going to be going through the Measure of a Man Bible study, which will show us 20 attributes of a godly man in the Bible. For more information, call the church office or email us at groups@lovelandchurch.org. All men are welcome.
Loveland has an amazing children's ministry designed to help your kids grow strong in the Lord. Loveland Student Ministry is open for kids of all ages during each service. Get your kids in today. It is a biblical Disneyland that your kids will love for a lifetime.
The Gospel of Love is coming. A new series that will unlock more of the Lord's power and blessings in your life. Get ready. It's coming this spring.
Happy birthday, Loveland HD! We're celebrating the 15-year anniversary of our Loveland High Desert campus with a worship concert featuring Soft Fire. Join us on Sunday, March 26th at 2 p.m. for refreshments and 3:30 p.m. for the concert. Hope to see you all there.
Hey, have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could think just a little bit deeper? Or I wish I could be just a little bit wiser? Well, if you have, you need to join us beginning Thursday night. Yeah, it's a new night for Loveland's online Bible study. Thursday night, March 16th. We will start walking through the book of Proverbs.
Easter Sunday is coming, and we're going to celebrate the Lord's resurrection. You know the best way to celebrate the resurrection? Introduce somebody to Jesus. How? Invite them to church. You know, most people who don't go to church would come to church if someone just invited them. You can change someone's destiny by inviting them to church and introducing them to Jesus. All you have to do is go to the lobby after service and grab a handful of the invitation flyers that we have. Hand them out in your neighborhood and watch a revival break out as we invite people to church. Let's invite the Inland Empire to meet Jesus and change their destiny.
Welcome back. I am here with Dr. Shonda Smith and Dr. Wanda Cooper, and we are talking about mental wholeness, how to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. We're talking about mental wholeness and making sure that we know the stigmas, let's say we know the importance of being mentally whole, mentally healthy. So before the break, we were talking about the stigmas and why people have those stigmas. And then we're going to be talking in a moment about depression. But let's talk about the stigmas for just a second.
I really like the point you made about the difference between the reasons men in particular may go to see a doctor, and bringing that to a cultural piece. For some groups of people, it's a badge of courage to have a therapist.
Yes.
And it's impressive. Oh, I got a therapist, and they will brag about it.
And the therapists have therapists.
Yes. And so for some groups of people, like I said, that's what it is. For others, it's a shame.
Yes.
Speaking of African Americans in particular, because I'm African American, you are brought up. What happens in the family stays in the family.
Right.
What happens in the community stays in the community. At one time, and it's a shame that it's not like this in many churches, but at one time the church was the one-stop place. You went to the church for everything. The only other place you went was the funeral home to get something authorized or notarized. But you normally, in the community, the pastor knew everything. If Johnny got in trouble at 3 o'clock in the morning, you call pastor, because pastor had a relationship with the family. And you knew that you could rely on pastor. Then it came about the stigmas, like you said. If I go see a therapist, that means I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And so we did the things like that old movie, Soul Food. You know, Johnny was upstairs and we just slid the food under the door.
Yes.
You know, but he had a mental health problem. So that's one of the stigmas, which is major even to this day. Doing my master's, I did my thesis on African Americans' attitude toward psychotherapy and pastoral counseling. Really interesting what I found in doing my research. So that's one of the main reasons. We, you know, and now it's not even so much a financial issue, because a lot of people go before the judges, like I do with the families I work with, and they are mandated to go for therapy. So they don't have the excuse, I can't afford it. But even then, they struggle with that. I don't need no therapy, ain't nothing wrong with me.
Yeah, and I want to also add to, it's in addition to what you shared, is that I think people are afraid. It's the fear component. It's the fear of unknown. In addition to like what you were saying, Dr. Wanda, it's the fear of the stigma of this label being put on me that I am crazy, right? And then I think also too, sometimes I think people don't seek therapy because they don't think it's gonna work, right? As Dr. Wanda said earlier in the earlier segment, there's no magic pill. We don't have a magic pill to like, you know, you take it and then there it is, it just fixes it. No, there's a process that takes place in therapy. And what I have found in my own professional experience is that I find sometimes people get impatient with the process. You know, like after 3 or 4 sessions, they get sort of, you know, agitated. It's not working. Well, it can work. You just have to, you know, give it time. It's like you've been functioning in this place, if you will, for so many years, and you expect overnight to, you know, be healed from it. No, there's a process. So I think, what am I saying? I'm saying there's a fear component, and I also believe that people think that therapy doesn't work.
And let's add to this. If you go and find out that you need therapy, and you also go to a psychiatrist, which is a doctor that can write the meds, the two go together. You can't have, if you're prescribed medication, you can't have just taking the medication and not doing the therapy. So if you're been prescribed or recommended that you take your medication and go to therapy, you must do both. You can't have one without the other, and it'll be effective. So the effectiveness is, if you're prescribed the medication, do both.
Yeah, and let me also add to that. I think that's a really excellent point. So what the medicine does is help if there's any type of chemical imbalance in the brain. It helps to stabilize that individual so that they can do the talk therapy, right? Meaning process, unpack the emotions, unpack the thoughts, right? It's the mind, body, all of that's connected. Some people can't even do the talk therapy because there's such an imbalance when we talk about brain chemistry. So some need it so that they can do the psychotherapy.
Let me ask you guys a question. So, because I know both of you have your practices. You have your private practice, and then you work with the colleges. And when somebody comes to you, okay, and just like when people come down to the altar, a lot of times people come down the altar, they don't know why they're coming down to the altar, but they know they need to get some type of spiritual help. So when someone comes, both of you, what happens when a new person comes?
What I do in my first session, in all my sessions, the sessions is about the client, not about me. And I don't try to tell you, okay, this is what we're going to talk about this week. So we start where you begin. And I usually ask my client, out of all the things that you feel that you have to deal with, what's your priority?
Right.
What do you want to, what would you put on the list as the number one thing? And usually it comes out. There are cases where I don't know because this happened, but I understand. And most of the time they have a list of a gamut of things, and I'm like, okay, we can't do all that in one session. And so you focus on that, and let's say anxiety. So then we begin to talk about what your anxiety is, and then we go from there.
Yeah, and that's my similar process too. For me, I'm really interested in the story behind the individual. As I said to you before, is that before life got their hands on the individual, they were not, whatever that is, that label or that situations they're going through, they were not that. They were fine, they were functioning, and then life happens. I'm interested in understanding what is that story. And like Dr. Wanda said, I have an agenda. I don't know the agenda, right? The client is the one that leads us. And so we follow the client's lead. And as we follow the client's lead, in addition with the Holy Spirit, because he's the ultimate counselor of all counselors, can I say that, right? And so I'm listening to what the Holy Spirit may be saying to me, because there may be a pointed question that I didn't even think about that he's saying, ask this, because then that question gets to the root of the matter. Right? So for me, the beginning process, I'm not even necessarily doing any kind of treatment or any of that. It's just taking the time, because here's the other thing. New clients, first they got to trust you, because it requires vulnerability. To first of all, you come in, I applaud my clients. Congratulations on taking the first step, which is coming. That takes courage. And then second, okay, I think I like you. I think I trust you. So you have to give time. As therapists, we have to give time to build rapport and trust. And for me, it's just sitting back, it's listening what I need to hear, and then asking the question or making the statement to the client to help to begin to unlock, to begin to unpack, to begin to unroot what lies beneath so that they can get their freedom.
Another thing, Pastor Charlene, that's really important is the type of therapy. Personally, I believe, once again, talk therapy is overused. Every week you come in, and in some cases, the client is reliving the trauma.
Yeah.
And clients, you can feel, you can see the resistance. We got to talk about this again. So there's different types of therapy. For instance, and this is another show, I'm sure, I use play therapy and Santre a lot, especially with those clients who find difficult to talk. They haven't quite established that rapport. And so it's important as a good, effective therapist to know the different types of therapy to use, opposed to just sitting down, let's talk about it. What worked for you last week? What didn't work? I mean, every week, those are the two questions you're going to ask me, so it's very important as we build and establish a rapport.
I really like the fact that both of you all just said the very first time, you're just listening, and because I'm more into music, and soloists will tell you, if you have a soloist and a keyboardist, the keyboard player follows the soloist. The soloist never follows the keyboard, because That keyboard player might be playing Amazing Grace the way it's always been, but she might have a different take on that. So he has to listen, and that's what I'm hearing with you all, because everything can be likened to something, you know, on in a different area. And if we have, if you have a question in the audience, you can raise your hand. And okay, so we have a question. Can you come up to the mic and ask that question? And you're going to look into that camera right there, or you can look at them. Okay.
My name is Richard, and my question is, could you address, both of you, how the 12-step group civic recovery model can be adapted to the African American church?
That mic is not on, Diane. Can you cut the mic on? Or you could hit the button so we can get that question, because what we know is...
Okay.
Okay. We know there's
Richard,
another question going to be over here.
And I want to know how can the 12-step group civic recovery model be adapted and modified for the African American church?
How could